Hello, hello, hello. Hi, everyone. Welcome. Can I have you unmute yourself?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. I just
Awesome.
realized that.
No worries. Welcome everyone today to a Developer Heroes workshop that we're doing. We're calling it the Developer's Guide to Contributing to Polkadot, kind of a 101 series, if you will. And we're super excited to be kicking that off. I think we'll have more content in the 2024 new year for you. So be on the lookout for that as well. But yeah, we're going to start off today. You've prepared for us kind of a beginner guide. How are you phrasing it in your mind?
So you can think of this as like a really high level. This caters to like anyone who just maybe looks at Polkadot as a developer and they're like, okay, where can I kind of begin and insert myself? Where can I contribute? What are the points at which I can maybe I have some previous expertise, some experience with other development stacks, Web 2, Web 3, whatever. And I
Yeah,
want to start contributing to Polkadot. So where can I kind of start
exactly.
doing
Oh, I
that? So
love
that's
that.
kind of what this is focused on, right? It's kind of like an overview more than
And I
anything.
think a lot of people find themselves in that particular spot, right? Where they have maybe attended a hackathon, saw us at a meetup, some like they've heard the buzzwords of Polkadot, they're into it. They've applied to be a part of the hero program. They're a rookie and they are feeling like, okay, now what's next? What do I do? And this is sort of an answer to that, if you will.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Cool. Well, thank you everyone for saying hello in the chat. Super happy that you're here. And if you are watching a recording of this, hello to us in the future. I hope you're doing well. But yeah, I guess without further ado, I will let you jump into it and we will take it from there. Of course, folks in the chat, feel free to ask questions. This is the perk about being a part of the Heroes program, is that you are here live with us and not watching a recording, and you can ask all the questions that you have. Feel free to derail us, take us on a tangent for whatever your curiosities lie, and we welcome that. But I will pull up your screen and take myself out of the chat and let you take it away. But I'll be right here if you have any questions or have any needs. Okay.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Of course. I'm so stoked for this. All right. Enjoy, everyone.
Okay, hey everyone. So this is actually not going to take too much of your time, hopefully. This is more of an overview. Hopefully, I'll make it concise enough to the point where you can take away, like, okay, here are some actionable things which I can do today to kind of get an overview of, if you don't know even what Polkadot is, beyond just like a blockchain, well, Polkadot has many different moving parts. And if you're a developer wanting to build on Polkadot, there's many different places where you can either contribute to it or you can build something entirely new from it. And this will hopefully give you a little bit of clarity into Polkadot's open source stack, as we're kind of calling it. Because at the end of the day, Polkadot is a fully open source protocol. Everything about Polkadot, you can see like 99% of its progress being done out in the open, all of its various parts. So yeah, to introduce myself, I'm Bedr Youssef, a technical educator at the Web3 Foundation, currently working on a lot of Substrate and Rust content. So, which actually brings us very well into the subject of talking about contributing development-wise onto Polkadot. So today we'll be going over just really a few things. First of all, we'll go over an overview of the most important repositories on Polkadot. And then finally, we'll talk a little bit about kind of the state of documentation, because I know for people new to the ecosystem, it can be hard to get a grasp on, okay, well, there's all these really cool things which I can learn, but how can I read about them and find more about them? And we'll kind of go over places where you can do that. And I'll go a little bit into how to start contributing, how to approach a problem when you want to contribute in Polkadot. And finally, if you need help, if you want to talk to other engineers, talk to other people in the ecosystem, where to kind of reach out in the channels to do that, where people are most active. So of course, and you may already know about this, but the heart of Polkadot right now is the Polkadot SDK. And a brief history, in case you're not familiar, is it used to be 3 repositories, meaning Substrate, Cumulus, and Polkadot. And now they're merged into one single mono repo. And Substrate is used as the kind of, the substrate or the foundation for building blockchains. Cumulus gives you the functionalities to build parachains for Polkadot. And then Polkadot uses Substrate to form the actual Polkadot protocol, right? The layer 0 kind of meta protocol. And if you kind of dive into this a little deeper, you find out that Polkadot's kind of like a very tall building, like many different layers of contribution. So you kind of have the protocol layer at the very top where you have Polkadot, Substrate, Frame, Cumulus, right? All these things are used to build actual blockchains, to build out protocols. And if we look at what a blockchain is at its very core, it's merely like a state machine. And these give you the tools to kind of build various state machines which can sync with one another, come to consensus with one another, or not, depending on your use case. It's very possible that you could build something which doesn't even really resemble a blockchain with something like Substrate. But of course, we use Substrate to build blockchains. And then as you kind of traverse down this path from the protocol level, right? This is where you can build things like Polkadot, you can build things like Kusama, like these, blockchains that can host other blockchains or coordinate other blockchains. Then you start getting into more parachains and building out blockchain runtimes. These run on Polkadot or use Polkadot as a form of, economic security or functional security. Um, and that's where you start getting into things like palettes. And even smart contracts kind of fit into this category, things like ink and solidity, because they can be built as a palette, as a virtual kind of runtime to execute these bits of logic. And then as you go further down, then you get into developer tooling. So things like client libraries. There's libraries like SubXT, which give you a Rust client for talking to Polkadot. Then you have things like Polkadot.js, which give you the same functionality only for JavaScript and TypeScript. So if you're building like a traditional web app and you want to integrate and call Polkadot stuff, then you would use Polkadot.js. And then furthermore, people build apps using these developer toolings and libraries. So you have things like Subsocial, just as an example of like on-chain social media. You have PokeAssembly, which is used to kind of look at OpenGov proposals and the voting mechanisms on Polkadot. Then you have wallets, of course, fit into this category. And you can kind of see here how one thing depends on another. So the apps depend on the tooling and the libraries depend on the palettes and the runtimes, are coordinated and built using the protocol layer libraries. And then at the very bottom, you see the content layer. So even if you're not a developer, you can be contributing to Polkadot kind of as a whole by just creating better documentation, contributing to the Polkadot wiki, creating tutorials, whether technical or non-technical, writing various articles. Because inside of each one of these little pink boxes, you can probably divide these into a whole nother like tree of different subjects. If I were to just go into Substrate, then I would start talking about a WebAssembly. I would start talking about host functions and creating runtimes and running those runtimes and creating like client side stuff and all sorts of things. And that brings us again to the main point that Polkadot is open source software. So contributions are super important, even from like little README changes, right, which we'll kind of get to see, to core protocol changes which like affect the functionality of Polkadot. And of course, don't forget about those libraries. As I kind of mentioned, these may seem overwhelming, like the protocol layer at first may feel kind of overwhelming, but really, you can get involved at a lower level by just contributing to things like the client libraries, right? Like SubXT or Polkadot.js, which give you the ability to communicate substrate-based chains. And of course, there's many templates as well, which if you feel like improving or forking and creating better versions of, you're fully able to do that. So things like the solo chain template, the substrate node template, the extended parachain template for creating parachains using Cumulus, and then Frontier, which is like an EVM compatible chain kind of template. All these things are kind of up for grabs for you to take and transform them to your own kind of thing, whether it actually makes it back into the original repo or you create something new out of it. All of these kind of counts as contributing to the overall ecosystem by building something new and unique. And before contributing to something like the core protocol, you might actually want to take one of these templates and build something with it because it'll give you that extra bit of insight into how all the different pieces work together. And this is just a little excerpt taken from the Polkadot wiki, where we kind of have like this graph of all the different things and paths you can take of how to build those things. So if you just want to build a smart contract, you would use a smart contract parachain or a parachain that supports smart contracts. Polkadot does not directly support smart contracts, so you have to use one of the parachains, which does. Polkadot is used for coordinating blockchains. It's not used for executing smart contracts. Then, of course, if you want to get into more of the layer of building blockchains, then there's a couple different paths you can take, right? You use the Polkadot SDK, you build out a runtime, you compile it to WebAssembly, then you can turn that into either a parachain or a solo chain, right? And each of those has its own kind of pros and cons, if you will. Then, of course, you can just develop apps, right? Develop web apps that use Polkadot and use different parachains. So yeah, this is kind of like a summary of what I just said. But from the protocol layer, you're often, if you want to contribute to the protocol layer, you're looking at touching on deeper kind of computer science issues, more engineering oriented, depending on how deep you go, right? Palettes and runtimes are more business logic of blockchains, like how the blockchains work, how they distribute, um, and uh, and deal with different like specific applications, right? It's like app specific. Developer tooling and libraries, right? Are there ways to consume the above? So it's ways to interface with those nodes, and interface with those palettes, and interface with those runtimes. And um, apps, of course, that use the above and content and so on. So let's get to how do I contribute? And I see already that there's a question on how to contribute. And I think that, hold on, let me just look at this. Okay, that's a great question. I'll come back to that in a little bit because I think what I'm about to say will kind of like answer most of your question. So let's get into the mentor issues on the Polkadot SDK. So if you are interested in contributing like things like palettes, like what was just asked, you can actually look for different mentor issues, right, on the Polkadot SDK. And these are, if you go to the issues category, you see on the Polkadot SDK, it's actually quite a beefy repository, right? There's a lot here. And if we go into issues, there's 1,200 issues. So there's quite a bit, or more like 1,100, but close to 1,200 issues, which you can go and start reading and learning from. Now, I would say the best way for you to start like looking at, okay, what can I contribute to? Go to label and then type mentor and then filter it by the mentor label. And some of these are super easy. Some of them are simply things like potentially even like deleting a README or modifying a README, right? Some of them are a little bit more advanced. Some of them you may be working with things like the parachain validation function or some things which require more research or more question asking. But there's things of all different levels here. For example, if you're getting started like with Rust and stuff, this might be something cool, right? To implement certain traits for certain structs, which may be useful. You see, this actually has already a nice, already an assignee. And you'll also notice that this is a great way to talk to some of the core engineers and some of the core protocol developers. So you can kind of talk to them directly, work through the issue, right? That's labeled as a mentor issue and things like that. Let's get back to here. So, yeah, so it's a great place to start if you have a strong kind of Rust background or you're comfortable with Rust, or really if you just want to learn more Rust and really throw yourself into it, looking at these issues, trying to understand them, and then attempting to take up some of them which seem reasonable would be a great way to start actually getting to know not only the protocol but also like practicing Rust, um, and things like that. It's a diverse set of tasks, like even from things like docs. Sometimes you might just be writing better documentation for something, but to write better documentation, you have to understand that thing better. So you have to do research, you have to run tests, you have to potentially write more unit tests to understand a certain thing, or even to things like core development, right? So from docs to core development. And of course, that allows you to get to know the core Polkadot protocol, right? It's an extremely involved protocol with many moving parts. But once you learn how it works, it starts to really make sense. And of course, as I said, you get to learn from the engineers themselves. So you get to kind of talk to them, go back and forth. They can tell you where you're messing up, what you should be doing better, etc. And yeah, there's a lot of opportunity in this open source space. So you should be taking advantage of it, not only for learning, but also just to kind of see how a very large project can be open source, yet be successful. And to learn more about the core protocol and to read about these different things, what I would highly, highly recommend is you look at the Polkadot SDK Rust docs. So if you're looking to get like very deep into something, you would go to paritytech.github.io/polkadot-SDK. And you would be able to read about um, like core Polkadot protocol stuff. That's hard to say. Um, right? Things from substrate to frame to cumulus, where you can read about, for example, we're putting together this like little developer crates where you can read through the design decisions of various parts of Polkadot, right? For example, you can read about how blockchains are state machines and how that transitions into frame and substrate and how that kind of works. So, highly recommend you go and you read through some of this. It is in progress as of this recording. Um, it is like still a work in progress. Like some of these are completely rare now, as you can see. And if you feel like you have the expertise to write one of these or improve one of these documents, again, that's a form of contribution to the Polkadot SDK. You should definitely take that up if you can. But here you get into like really kind of like the heart of Polkadot, right? Understand it at the very technical foundational layer. Like this one, for example, talks about the WebAssembly meta protocol, right? This is what really makes Polkadot like special. The idea of storing code in state and allowing parachains to validate their state via the relay chain, things like that. Like these are extremely unique concepts, and this is the place where you can kind of read about them. And like I said, it's not completely complete yet, not with all the details. But furthermore, you can also look into the code itself. So, for example, on the subject of the WebAssembly kind of executor and stuff, you can read about that. So you can go into the various crates at the side here, click on them. You can also search. So let's say I want to search for executor, and it will give me various things relating to this keyword, right? Which may lead me to the crate that specifically handles dispatching and executing calls in the runtime. So again, like we're at a very low level here, but here you can come in here, you can read the code, figure out how things work, right? The seemingly like magic of things. You can go on the Rust docs and find out a lot. From here, you can even read the code. However, I would recommend actually cloning the Polkadot SDK and then going in something like VS Code. And if you do open it in VS Code and you're using the Rust Analyzer, I would recommend you turn off the Rust Analyzer unless you have a really good computer. Um, Otherwise, you might have a hard time. But like just like for reading code, VS Code is great. But the Rust docs, of course, ultimately provide you some extra context in a more readable manner. Let's see, where are we at? Yeah, if you want to be well informed, though, like bottom line, as a developer, GitHub is really the best place to be. You have to be because Polkadot is extremely active on GitHub. It's where all the action happens, and usually it ends up trickling down into social media or whatever. And that's really kind of to my point. If you don't know Rust well, and these things seem like kind of crazy and hard to grasp, well, contributing takes many forms, right? You can build something really cool and just write about it and post it on social media. I found places like HackerNoon are great for something like that. In the past, I've built things. You write about the experience on HackerNoon, and that way you're also like internalizing what you learned, and then you post it on Twitter and then the Polkadot forum. And then for inspiration to build these different things, look at the existing parachains and decentralized apps that are already in the Polkadot ecosystem, right? How can you build something new? How can you put a twist on something, right? Take something from Web 2, replicate it on Web 3. How easy is that? And then write about that experience. And of course, we talk about Polkadot, but we can't forget Polkadot's parachains. That's really what makes Polkadot Polkadot. You need to have its parachains, which each offer its own really unique set of functionality. And you can also contribute directly to these parachains as they're like 90% of the time always open source. So you can also contribute to their code repositories and their documentation. And you can even combine different functionalities from different Polkadot parachains and put them together and build them. So if one parachain kind of like speaks to you, like you really like the idea of this parachain or the methodology behind this parachain, you should look to contributing to it. And above all, right, the Polkadot Wiki always can use more contributors making valuable contributions. So at the Web3 Foundation, for example, the tech ed team, which is the team I'm on, we manage the wiki, right? If there's like a new feature in Polkadot, we have to learn about that feature, we have to write about it, oftentimes make like diagrams and really illustrate it and really understand it well. So if you feel like kind of contributing to the wiki in whatever way, maybe something's unclear, maybe it's outdated, like please make a PR. Like it's actually amazing when people end up like fixing things for us or finding mistakes. So I would love if you actually went and did that. For example, on the build section of the wiki, and I'll actually go ahead and open this right now. If we go to wiki.polkadot.network and I go to build, I just revamped this page to kind of better lead people into different paths of development, right? If you feel like that there's parts of here that are unclear or outdated, or you're saying, hey, this doesn't make much sense, feel free to go and create a PR in the wiki, right? It's right here. You can click contribute in the upper right. And there's a whole guide for how to contribute, the etiquette and everything like that. And you can and then we will review it and determine if it's something which should be put in the wiki. So again, many different ways to contribute, right? It doesn't only have to be code. Polkadot Wiki is visited by a lot of people, and if you find something unclear, chances are if you make it clear, other people will benefit from that. Finally, how do you reach out for help for all of these things? So of course, we have the Heroes program, which is great. So via the Discord group, I'm usually lurking around in there sometimes, and I'll answer questions. And there's other heroes and other people there who will also answer questions. Creating GitHub issues is a good way. If you really have something which you believe should be like fixed, whether that's in the Polkadot SDK or whether that's in Polkadot.js or something, creating a GitHub issue is usually a pretty good way to kind of get that out there. If you're working on a mentor issue, you most likely be in touch with like the maintainers for that code. So you'll get like a really direct line there if you're working on a mentor issue. And if you have a deeper kind of proposed like change, right? Like a change to the core logic of some Polkadot mechanism, and you want to like discuss it with a wider audience, you should take it to the Polkadot forum. So forum.polkadot .io, or what is it? Yeah, .network. Forum.polkadot.network. Here you can find many different people discussing many highly technical things or things to do with their various projects or proposals, and there's a lot of very valuable conversation that goes on here, and you can also start valuable conversation here. So if you find something which you feel is worth discussing, you may open a topic here on the forum. And yeah, that's kind of it. I'll conclude here. So all these different ways, all the way from taking up a mentor issue down to improving the wiki, right? There's so many ways to contribute. You can find me on any of these platforms. Yeah, and happy contributing. Let me see if there's any questions now. There's
just the one
yes,
that we
this
had
one.
before.
So what sorts of contributions could be made to frame palettes? I figure most of them are already set in place. Do you have any advice on contributing on palettes level? Some sample palettes that accept contributions. Okay, that's a good question. I would say probably if there's any pressing issues with the palette, it would be labeled as a mentor issue.
Mm-hmm.
But like I know, for example, let me see. For example, there's some things, and this is why I say like to watch GitHub, because there might be things like some of the macros in the frame palettes may change, and then they may need to be refactored. So you want to look for like deprecated code. Where is code deprecated? Oh, this palette still has some deprecated code. Let me put up a PR and try to fix that. The palettes aren't like set in place. The palettes are always being updated. That kind of answers your question. Like,
yeah, it's
you
good
can,
to
if
not
you feel like that,
assume
you
that.
can make it better, or something like that. Then yeah, of course, feel free to.
I hope that answers your question. Of course, folks, if there are other questions, please.
Lauren, I'm not sure if I can't hear you, but maybe it's just a.
Hello?
I don't know whether it's just my own stream or something.
I think it might be. Hello?
Any projects contribute as a TypeScript React engineer too? That's a great question. Let's actually. Well, right now, probably the most prominent, like JavaScript oriented, project is Polkadot.js. And as far as I know, that takes. Let's actually look for that repository right now. Polkadot. Oh, that's actually not in this organization. So let's look for Polkadot.js. Yeah, so Polkadot.js is the most JavaScript oriented or TypeScript oriented like repository. It includes the app for it, includes there's documentation for it. Then there's the actual like core API, right? It's under this organization here. So maybe someone can post that in the chat. Talisman wallet. I forgot about. So Talisman actually they have a great community for contributing. So they encourage you to actually go and like learn the code base, start making contributions, go in their Discord and start learning. And that's why I say to also not only look at Polkadot, but look at whoever's building on Polkadot and see where you can contribute, right? And I think it'd be a good idea to kind of compile a list of like other contribution areas.
I love that.
I don't know why I can't hear Lauren. That's strange.
I don't either, but I'll just keep. I agree. That would be a really cool project for someone of the heroes as they're learning. I guess you can't hear me.
Any other questions?
All right. Well, then what I'll do, I'm going to take that off. You can't hear me saying thank you, but know that I really appreciate you. And I, oh, hold on. Oh, someone's saying hi. That you
Yeah, I
Be able
believe
to
I remember your name.
That's so cool.
We met on the blockchain India bootcamp. Yeah, I believe I talked about Rust for substrates. We talked about like associated types and
Yeah,
traits and stuff. Yeah, yeah, I believe I remember that.
that's so fun.
Yeah,
I love
hopefully that will
seeing
actually
people
come in
make
handy when
connections.
you want to read substrate code. So,
How can we get good at the substrate framework?
how
Ooh.
can we get good at the substrate framework? Practice, build things. You have to build things. You have to write, if you don't understand something, write unit tests for it. If you
Mhm.
want to understand how something works end to end, you have to build something with it, right? There's no way around it. Like you can read about it all you want, but at the end of the day, you have to like pull it down, you have to break it, and then you have to make it work again. So yeah, you have to build things. Find like a small project, try to work on it, maybe a small idea. And if you can't find one, pitch it in like the Heroes program. I'm sure people have many ideas or in the community and find something and try to work on it.
I love that. Okay, well, thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate you so much. And otherwise, folks, Happy New Year. This is our final stream and workshop for the year. And we'll be picking things up and get things running in 2024. So for now, happy holidays. We'll see you soon. And be sure to stay active with your questions and contributions. Let us see it in GitHub and Discord and share with us there. And be sure to ask Badr all the questions that you have following this workshop he gave. And just go tell him thank you again for giving us his time this afternoon, morning, evening, wherever you are. And okay. So long. I'll tell you when to close now. He's asking when should I get off.
All right,
Goodbye,
guys, thank you so
everyone.
much for attending. Hopefully, shed a little bit of lights on everything to do with the Polkadot open source stack, and hopefully you can find something productive to do within it. So yeah, thank you, everyone.